All right, Remi, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Asai.
All right, introduce yourself. I'm so glad to speak with you, but I'm sure everyone wants to know who you are.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My name is Remi Roy. I am an entrepreneur. I'm an author. I am the host of the Driven Introvert podcast and also the founder of PodGround, which is a networking platform for independent podcasters.
Ooh, that's exciting. And that's why I'm so excited to speak with you about podcasting,
Hmm.
because I think a lot of people are always trying to figure out how best to use this platform. So let's jump right into it. What
Sure.
exactly is a podcasting strategy versus, oh, we're just going to start a podcast?
I know. This is a great question. I think everyone who wants to start a podcast or even maybe already has a podcast needs to think about this. And I think a lot of people don't think about it enough. So starting a podcast it's easy, right? All you have to do is get a mic and talk into the mic and upload it somewhere, right? It's that straightforward. But if you really want to do it right, if you really want to be intentional about what you're doing, you want to have a strategy. And the way that I think about it is you want to think about a foundation for your podcast, right? Because we know how it goes. When you have a solid foundation for something, even when there's storms, like it will stand. So that's the way I try to look at it. So you want to think about there's some points that I really want people to always hit when you're thinking about a foundation and strategy for your podcast. What is your why? What is the why behind your podcast? Like, what's the story? Is it something that happened to you that sort of sparked this idea? Is it a conversation you had? Is it something about your industry? What is the why, right? And you want to really nail that down. It might take a while for you to really dig deep and find it, but it'll be very helpful, when you start to create content and try to build a community or whatever it is that you want to do. You want to think about your audience. Who are they? Like, who is your audience? And think beyond demographics here. Think beyond, oh, they're 30, they're 90, they're 80, right? Think about the psychographics. What are they experiencing? Like, what's in their mind? What are they going through? What is the experience, that makes them sort of qualified, so to speak, to be part of your audience, right? You want to think about what are you trying to say to those people, right? Your audience, what do you provide? What is the transformation you want them to encounter when they listen to your show, when they follow your podcast or whatever it is? And then on your side, you want to think about your content, the content pillars, right? You want to be able to create a cadence that makes it easy for you to touch on whatever it is you're talking about in different ways that makes it interesting for your audience to continue to listen, right? So do you want to tell stories? Do you want to give tips and actionable strategies or whatever? Do you want to bring in like other voices? Like, how do you want your content to be structured? And then you can think about other like tactical things like, what are you recording on? Your branding, your frequency, how often do you want to, release your episodes? And you also want to think about what does success look like for you? Because a lot of people, I feel like we don't pay attention to what does it take to actually succeed at something? You know, even anything outside of podcasting, like life, what does it take and what does success look like? And when you have that idea, right, it helps you go long term. A lot of people, I don't know if you've probably heard of this term, pod fade, because you start a podcast and you have so much excitement and you go hard for like 3 months and then you drop off the face of the earth and be like, what happened to your podcast? Well, I don't know, whatever. So that the temptation to give up on the process is there. But I feel like if you have a foundation, you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, and you have an idea of what success looks like, and you're realistic about that idea of success, it goes a long way. So I see strategy as this multi-pronged approach to really creating content, building community around your content, and ultimately whatever your goals are and succeeding in those goals.
Oh, I really like that. And I never heard that phrase before about
God
pod
fade.
fade, but I
I
know
know.
I have, I'm one of those that have faded. But I'm gonna get myself back together with this
Let's do
strategy.
it.
I'm excited.
I love
Okay.
it.
So talking about using the podcast for business growth,
Hmm.
right? Like, of course, it's great to be able to just go online and share your thoughts and anything that comes to you. But for
Mhm.
some of the people watching, it's more about, okay, I'm thinking about business growth. What
Mhm.
are some specific business goals that a founder can be thinking about, and they should define before starting a podcast? And how can they, after they've come up with those goals, start thinking about what they need to do to get those results?
Yeah. This is a great question. I like that you mentioned that you could actually just decide that your podcast is a passion project. That's valid too, right? You are passionate about something, an idea, stories you want to tell, a community you want to connect with. That's valid too. But if your podcast is sort of like a marketing strategy for your business to really get in front of your customers, to support them where they are, to provide resources or whatever it is that you're trying to do, it's good to think in terms of how that works for you. So ultimately, if you're trying to make revenue from your podcast, so that'll be the ultimate business goal, right? You want to make revenue, you want your work to be sustainable, you want the podcast to actually not be a burden at the end of the day because it's a time suck. You want to be able to, use it to support your business. I think there are like three big buckets that I like to frame this in. Number one is you want to drive traffic to your thing, whatever your thing is, your business, your platform, whatever you're building. And we're going to break this down a little bit. You want to do that. Number two is you want to build community and loyalty around your thing. And number three is you want to monetize the podcast itself as a product, right? So these are three big buckets that you can kind of sort of think about. And all of this is possible with varying amount of work and time and effort, but it is possible. So let's start with the third one. This would be the one that you have least control over because you're looking at monetizing the podcast itself as a product. What you would need to do is you need to build a huge following, and that will take time. And you don't have a lot of control over that, right? You need a lot of downloads. You need to have a huge user base. You need to be able to now figure out how to get sponsorships and ads and get brands to kind of collaborate with you to reach your audience. That's a strategy, that you can use to think about, okay, if the goal is to make revenue from your podcast, that's a strategy. Now it takes time. It takes, I mean, if you're not if you're a celebrity, come on, you can do it in whatever. But if you're like the rest of us, it's gonna be a tough going, right? Either way, it's hard, but this is, really a long road. So I wouldn't recommend that for most founders, obviously. Number two is building community and loyalty around your thing, right? So you want to think about what is your brand? What is your product? Like, okay, so you're a founder. What are you building? What are you trying to do? And how can you use stories? How can you encourage listener engagement? How can you use narratives? Like the warm and fuzzy, so to speak. So people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. So let's take, for example, if you're a founder and you're building a tech platform for like maybe people who are interested in travel, who want to book experiences, and you want to make that easy, and you figured out a way for it to be scalable for you, and all of that. If you want to lean into this particular category or kind of looking at the business goal and using community and loyalty as the vehicle for that, you have to use a lot of stories. You have to think about, okay, maybe the people who are the early adopters, of your product, how can you get them to tell their stories, to talk about the places they visited, to talk about the process, that it took them, that your product really helped them to achieve. People these days, we know that we love experiences more than things, right? We want to go places, you want to, meet people, even if they're strangers, it doesn't matter. Like, let's go somewhere together and learn something and have a great time. So having people talk about those experiences, building community around that kind of thing, and you will find a lot of people, because this is aspirational, right? You will find a lot of people who want to do that. So using the podcast as a way to build community and loyalty around your product, so that when people think about, oh, I want to travel, oh, check out this platform. You can actually book experiences, you can meet with people, you can ask questions, and people feel like they're part of something bigger. That's one way. And long term, this is actually helpful because there's no better way to actually build some sort of stability into your product, to always have people want to use it than having that loyalty. because they feel connected to it and they will be your brand ambassador, so to speak. So that's one way to think about it. And then the first one will be to drive traffic directly to your thing. So in building community, you don't want to rush that process. You want to pay attention to your community. You want to nurture them. You want to pay attention. You want to tell stories that makes them feel included. But if you're driving traffic to your thing, which is the first one, it's the most like measurable and direct business goal that you can have, right? Because you can have you can have CTAs on all of them, definitely your call to actions. But if you're thinking about driving traffic, it's very targeted. You're creating actionable, practical, and highly relevant content at that time, right? Your SEO game has to be down. Your keywords, you have to be clear and concise on what your product is and how people can get value from it, like right now. So think maybe during holidays, for instance, people want to travel during holidays. You want to have very specific content that will help them think around, oh, do I want to travel? Where do I want to travel to? Maybe you want to talk about destinations, right? You want to talk about experiences, things they can do. You want to talk about budget, how can they make sure they're ready financially, for that travel experience. So you want to talk about things that will make people be like, ooh, this makes sense. Let me check this out right now because it's timely, it's actionable, it's practical. And that will help you, really dig into that. If you think about it, podcast listeners are not the most active. When we're listening to a podcast, you're doing something else most of the time, right? You are cooking, you're cleaning, you're taking a walk, you're driving, you're all of that, right? So you want to create content that is very actionable, that they want to take action at that time, and maybe you just drop what they're doing and say, oh, let me check this out, so it will take a lot of trial and error to get there. But these are the three buckets, the way that I kind of think about it. And for founders who really want to make revenue from their podcast, this is a great way to sort of structure your thinking around it. Do you want to take a very targeted approach and just drive traffic to whatever it is you're building? Of course, you have to use resources that are actually helpful, for your listeners. So like downloadable guides and stuff like that. And then but your CTAs have to be very direct. Do you want to build community? It will take a long time for you to do that, to nurture that audience, but that's definitely doable. And if you want to go like really big and create just huge platform, it'll take a different approach.
Oh, I really like that you can think about it in three different ways and try not to confuse each one, because the strategies for each one will be different.
Yeah.
So if your goal is A and you're doing a strategy that's more aligned with C, you can get that clarity right away.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. Yep. So can you take us through like a funnel from the podcast? So let's say for this first option, for the podcast to whether a community or to a thing, and then to your whatever you're creating as a founder. How would that work? What kinds of CTAs have you seen to work, and what kinds of assets or lead magnets or things like that should people be thinking about if they're going with option one?
Okay, that's a good question. I think you really do have to go back to the strategy question, right? Having a strategy before you even kind of start. So this helps you think long-term about the whole funnel. So you want to start with your value delivery. That's where the episode comes in, the content for the episode. What are you trying to say? So hopefully you have your content pillars, and then you can kind of look through that and say, okay, what am I trying to do with this episode? So I want people to book experiences. The ultimate thing I want them to do is go on the website, your product, and book an experience. Well, how can you get them there? Where do people, thinking about the journey, the customer journey, so to speak, how can you intercept them on that journey, right? So that they're thinking about, okay, this is something I need to pay attention to. So maybe it's almost like, I don't know, the holiday time, or it's going to be, maybe it's in, I don't know, October, whatever, and they're thinking, oh, maybe December, I want to take a trip or whatever. You want to create content that meets them sort of around that area. What can you talk about? What specific value can this particular episode provide that will help people get them on that journey, so to speak, to the point where they really want to book an experience with you? What do you want them to walk away with? What are they thinking about? And what action do you want them to take? So you want to think about that when you are crafting your content for that episode, right? Then you want to think about, okay, how do you get them from listening right, to actually take in some sort of action. The first thing you want to do is definitely get them into your marketing funnel. So you want to think about how can you get them on your email list, right? So that you can continue to have that conversation with them, right? So you want to craft episodes that actually get them there. You want to be able to come up with maybe, like you said, guides or resources. So think about, for example, for the travel experience thing, maybe you want to help them think about how to pack, for like a trip, through Europe or something. And you will give them very practical things that maybe they might not have thought about. Maybe how to draw up a budget so that you don't run out of money halfway through Europe or something like that. So very strategic, practical resources that they can use and have them go sign up for that, and then the content of the episode will lead directly into that. So you don't want to talk about um uh I don't know, maybe something like the seasons or like the weather in Europe right now. And then for the CTA, it's something that doesn't really relate to that. You want to keep it consistent. So the listener is not confused. So if you're talking about budget, then you want to create a resource that can help them, maybe a checklist, maybe a tool that can help them calculate how much it'll actually cost, to backpack through Europe in December, whatever it is, right? And then the likelihood of them actually downloading that resource hopefully is high. And then you get them into your funnel, into your marketing funnel, and then you can continue to nurture that lead and provide resources, and all of that. And say you have a sale, you have some sort of discount, you want to put all of those things in there to just help nurture them through the funnel. And at the end of the day, you want there to be value exchange. You want there to be revenue generation from this. So you want to think about what are your paid offers that will be a logical next step from your free content, and then you want to use that episode ultimately to create a way for your listeners to feel connected to that experience, to the point where they're thinking, I got to do this now. This is exciting. All of these resources have been so helpful. And I'm hearing stories, if you're, leaning into that, from people who have done this, people who have, gone on these trips, and I want to be part of that, right? So that's the way I would think about it. You want to think about the content. You want to think about the episode level. You want to think about the resources you're providing. You want to get them into your email list. You want to think about your automations, your campaigns inside of the email, are they optimized? Is it really hitting the mark and getting people to continue to see, your product as something that they would want to use, and ultimately get into the point of, paying you, for something on your platform. So that's the way I would think about it logically.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm just imagining that someone listening to this would be like, "Ooh, that sounds like a lot of work.
I
I'm
know.
trying to build this app or this tech company. I don't really have a team. I don't really have much of a budget, but I want to build an audience and I see the benefit to it." What would you say is like a low lift format for podcasting or creating a podcast episode that can be helpful, that they can start maybe right away, but it's low lift, so they don't have to be too stressed about it and they can just kind of start and iterate from there?
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you that it is a lot. To be honest with you, it is a lot. Either you're starting a podcast to support your business, or you're just building a business and figuring out how do I even get customers? How do I get users? It's a lot. And, it'll take a lot of time, and thought, and intention. But I think when it comes to podcasting, a low lead formats that I would recommend, two things come to mind. One is almost like bringing your audience into the story, into your process, almost like building in public, right? Where you're telling your story, you talk about what's happening behind the scenes. You're talking about your why, so to speak. Why are you building this product? And hopefully you can figure out a way to talk about it so that the people you're actually building it for will be interested in the journey, right? Because you can get them invested in that journey that way. So it's almost like a diary. The best example of this that I've seen, in podcasting is the Startup Podcast. And I think it was created by the company that's now Gimlet. I think they were sold to Spotify. I don't remember that. But they had this podcast. It was a podcast about starting a podcast startup. it was very meta. It was a podcast, and they were talking about how they were starting this startup that will do like podcasts, that will create podcasts. And it was so great. And I was so invested. It's part of the things that made me realize I really want to come back to podcasts, because I had pod faded at that time. And I was like, this is amazing. I want to do this. So it's possible to do that. If you do it well, I will recommend any founder who wants to try this, go listen to the Startup podcast. And it was done at a very high level, and you don't have to go that far. It's the principle that matters: sharing your story, sharing your heart, sharing the journey, and your why people should really, at the end of the day, use your product. Why should they be part of it? And sharing that journey as you go. That's one strategy. And you could just record it on the go. Like, there's so many tools these days that help you clean up your audio, maybe some light editing, just make it easy for you. So that's one strategy that I would recommend. Another thing that might be helpful, this might require a little bit of a lift because you have to be very brief and strategic in what you're trying to share. But think about how you could provide very short, straight to the point, actionable tips for your listeners. And the truth is, some people actually prefer podcasts that are short and to the point. They don't want to listen to a whole interview and, random tangents. They don't want to do that. And podcasting doesn't have to be, oh, you have to spend 30 minutes on an episode. It could be 5 minutes. But if you're able to pack value and intention and so much like, I don't know, just value, I guess is the word, into those 5 minutes, people will love it, because it can be so easy for them to integrate it into their day and just listen for 5 minutes, get something very actionable that they can work on, they can focus on for that day, for that week. So that's another way that I would think about it. Either way, it's going to take some work because we all know everything is work. But I think these two options should be helpful for any founder who wants to just get it off the ground and, with as easily as possible.
Wow, I really like these ideas because one, you're talking about something you're passionate about, which is the company or the product that you're building. So you can definitely do that.
Absolutely.
But it's just figuring out how to make it interesting and talk about it and engage with your audience. So I really like that. So for founders who are like, that sounds good, but I also want to invite guests. How can they think strategically about booking guests, whether it is around building their business or building their reputation, whatever? How can they think strategically about that?
Yeah, I think about guesting as just expanding your network, right? And it's, how would you go about expanding your network, right? You will go where the people are, so to speak, right? So who are the people you would want to talk to? Like, what are the insights you want to bring to your audience? Because at the end of the day, it's about your audience. What are the insights you want to bring to them? And how can you find the best people to come speak to that, right? So think about your industry. Where do people gather? Are they in events and conferences? Are they in groups? Are they on LinkedIn? Figure out these people and then follow them. Right? Follow them, see if, your content aligns, if their values, kind of like dovetail with yours, and figure out how to reach out to them. There are tools these days that you can use to find people. If you feel like this is a lot of work and it's a lot of, there are tools that you can sort of sign up for, and that would do some sort of matching between guests and hosts. This is possible, but whatever works for you, even if you don't have a budget, you can kind of think about it the way you would normally build your network, right? And another thing is, if you're thinking about people who already have speaking experience, because you want the person who comes on your podcast to be able to really share in a way that helps your audience, you can look at other podcast hosts, right? And look at the different industries. And that's one of the things we're trying to build into our solution, is for people to be able to find, each other, people in your audience, people in your, category, right, in your industry that you can connect with, that you can collaborate with on that level. But generally, you want to think about it as, who in my audience, in my network, I keep saying audience, who in my network do I want to connect with, and how can I build relationships? It takes time to build relationships, right? It doesn't have to take forever to get a guest on your show, but you don't want to think of them as just guests. And this is something that I have had to learn. When you have a guest on your show, you want to really nurture that relationship, right? You want to bring value to them just as they're bringing value to your audience. So you want to think about it long term, and you never know where these relationships could go. I mean, you're building a business and you want it to last, even if you do exit it at some point, you want it to last, you want it to make sense, you know. And so thinking of building relationships and not just trying to take from people, like, oh, come talk to my audience, or you feel like because that person is has a huge audience of their own and you want to just tap into that, it's fine. Ultimately, yes, you want people who maybe already have an audience. So it introduces your company, your podcast, your community to a new audience. But that's not the only thing you're getting out of this, right? You are also bringing something to the table. So that's the way I would go about it. Think about the way that you build your network normally and then tap into those spaces and begin to generally talk to people, make connections, and you never know what might come out of it.
Oh, I really like that. Like not looking at guests as just guests, but as a relationship, an opportunity to build a relationship, and you might be able to work on other things in the future together.
Yes.
You're providing like a benefit and they're providing a benefit and it's mutually beneficial. So that's awesome.
Mhm.
And that's something that I know you're really big on, building community. Can
Mhm.
you talk to us a little bit about that, like the benefits of being in community, whether it's as a founder or as a podcaster?
I mean, I think community is what makes it all work, right? Because we don't do things by ourselves. No matter how much we want to say, I'm self-made, I'm a self whatever, we need people, right? You need people in your corner. You need customers. You know, your product is not going to use itself. You need customers, you need people, you need advisors, you need colleagues, you need people who understand. So community is very important. And to be honest, the best way, like I said, for even finding guests, because it's all about people, right? The best way to actually plug into community is to lean into the conversations that are already happening in your industry, in the places that you want to play and operate in, right? Where are people right now? What are they talking about? You know, and how can you be a part of that? You know, knowing that you have something to bring to the table, something of value to bring to the space. For example, right now, I think we met Osai on Theana community, and this is so great because it's it's very easy to feel isolated. It's very easy to feel like, oh, I'm doing this by myself and I'm struggling through it. But the moment you find that there's someone else who is going through the same thing, who understands, you know, what you need, it just takes the burden sort of off of you. It doesn't solve all your problems, but it gives you direction. You know, it gives you insight. Now you can hear from someone else and you can see what they did that worked, what they did that didn't work. And even if you need like maybe advisors for your startup or your business or whatever, you can find all of that in community. But it takes showing up. It takes being intentional. And I always say not coming with the intention to only take because we don't like those people who only want to take from you. So you want to give. So whatever your space is that you are in, lean into that community, even if it's small. Ask questions, answer somebody's question, right? Give something, you know, offer to help somebody with something. That's how you build. It's a slow process. It takes time and patience to actually build your network and your community that way. But that's the way I would think about it. And the best way that you know that, okay, I'm doing something right, or I'm in this community and it's working, it's worth my time, is that is there that give and take in that community, and you want to be a huge part of that. So even with your users, like how do you come at the relationship that you have with your users, with your customers? You don't want to just have them pay for your product and that's it. So that's where customer service comes in. You build community by providing top-notch service that people want to come back and trust you. You know, community is more than just your family or like your ethnic group or whatever, because we always kind of think about it in that way. No, community is anybody that's able to come into your space and you can provide value to them and there can be that value exchange. You want to think about it that way. So whatever you're doing, building a business, starting a podcast, whatever it is, think about how you can bring value to other people. And yeah, it's a value exchange that way.
Wow, this has been such a rich conversation. Remi, for people who are watching and like, I'm sure they have so many more questions, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm on LinkedIn as Remi, and you can find me there. You can also, if you are interested in podcasting, or you have a podcast, or you want to come back from your podcast that you pod faded from, you can check us out. But check me out at podground.io. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. So podground.io, and then on LinkedIn, Remi, what's your last name?
OC, Remi OC.
Okay, just so they don't start searching for
I
all the Remis
know.
in the world.
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you, thank
Thank you
you,
so
thank you
much.
so much.
This is awesome.